Hi, this is Alex from MediaMaker.Tips. The best camera is the one you have with you. In this episode, we will discover 5 amazing premium compact cameras under $700. These cameras are small and they all have built-in zoom lens. But you will ask why the price point is so high. This is because all these cameras produce absolutely amazing image quality. They are pocketable, they are fast, both in operation and autofocus, and it's really almost a DSLR level. But who might want such pricey performers? Well, I can see 3 categories here. First category, people who want to step up from their smartphones. They want to have full control, a much better image quality, and a wider zoom range. Second category, people who want to learn photography, but at the same time they don't want to invest in interchangeable lenses or another accessories. And the third category, people who already have a DSLR system or mirrorless system, but they want something small, pocketable, that will be always with them. So, let's get started.
Alright, later in the video we will see image quality comparison of all these cameras, but now let's find out which are these 5 best premium compact cameras, what specifications they have and what feedback they have. And on the 5th place we have Canon G1X Mark II. This camera has 12 megapixels, and if you will not do any professional work with this camera, then 12 megapixels will be enough for anything. The sensor is 1.5 inches, which is pretty big, and it's about the same size as we have in Micro Four Thirds systems, and these systems mostly are with interchangeable lenses. The zoom range is pretty wide here as well, 24 to 120 millimeters, with aperture f2.0 to 3.9. The aperture at wide angle is pretty fast, it's okay. At the telephoto range it's a little bit too slow, but don't forget that we have a very wide zoom range here. And if we would like to know what depth of field this camera will produce comparing to full frame camera system, and this equivalent is f3.8 to 7.5. So if full frame camera would have a lens of aperture 3.8 to 7.5, then the depth of field of the images would be exactly the same as from this camera, and this is pretty amazing results. If we will compare equivalent of, let's say, Sony a6000 with a kit lens, then this would be f5.25 to 8.4. So this camera will produce even more shallow depth of field than the Sony a6000 with a kit lens, and than any Canon, Nikon and Sony crop camera with a kit lens. So pretty amazing results here, I would say. There is no many external controls here, but we do have tilt up and down touchscreen, which is very handy, because you can place this little camera at high or low angles and see your screen and see your picture that you are going to take. Also touchscreen is very handy because you can tap the focus and at the same time take the picture. This camera has 5.2 frames per second, and macro capabilities are 5 cm at wide angle, which is pretty average. Wi-Fi with NFC will help to share your images in social networks much faster. Unfortunately, there is no 4K video here, and there is no slow motion as well. There is ND filter here, and what ND filter does is it darkens up the scene to let the shutter speed be slower or the aperture be faster. For video, it will help to get the more natural look of the video, because shutter speed can be left slower, and in the photos it will help to separate your subject from the background much more efficient, because the aperture will be left much faster. Usually videos which are taken from such small cameras handheld are pretty shaky, And here we have optical image stabilization that will help to get much smoother movements in video. Also in photography, optical image stabilization is very handy if you shoot handheld in low light situations and your subject isn't moving, so you will get much sharper results. This camera has built-in flash, which is bounceable to about 80 degrees, and this is extremely helpful in shooting indoors. Even if a built-in flash isn't bounceable, then placing a mirror and bouncing it off the cells will result in a phenomenal difference in the image. This camera will produce about 240 shots of one charge. Optional electronic viewfinder is possible here through multifunction hot shoe. The weight is about half kilo, and this camera is the biggest of the all 5 here, but still it is a code Pocketable. There is no USB charging in this camera, but the biggest disadvantage of this camera is a Wi-Fi button allocation. It's just placed under your thumb, and you will press this Wi-Fi button accidentally again and again. The price is around $700 and all links will be placed in the description. On the 4th place we have a Panasonic Lumix DMC LX100. It is very similar camera to the previous Canon G1X Mark II, and it also has 12 megapixels with a Micro Four Thirds sensor here. Even if a Micro Four Thirds sensor is a little bit bigger than 1.5-inch sensor, this camera is using it in a little bit cropped mode, so actually used area of the sensor is about the same as for the Canon. The zoom range of the built-in lens is shorter. It is 24 to 75 millimeters, but the aperture is significantly faster. It's 1.7 to 2.8. But where this camera really shines is the equivalent depth of field or aperture. It is 3.74 to 6.16. It's actually very close to the real full-frame result here. And it is much better than any crop camera with a kit lens also. There are many external controls here, which is good, but on the other side there is no touchscreen, no tilt screen here, which I think is the most disadvantage of this camera. 11 frames per second and 6.5 frames per second with autofocus makes this camera really suitable for sports. Same 5 cm macro capabilities here on the wide angle. There is Wi-Fi with NFC as well, but unlike a Canon G1X Mark II, this camera do have 4K video and a little bit of slow motion at 1080p. There is no ND filter and built-in flash here, but there is optical image stabilization and hot shoe. The battery gives about 300 shots, and LX100 has electronic viewfinder. It is about 400 grams in weight. Size is a little bit smaller than Canon G1X Mark II. It is a code Pocketable and almost jeans Pocketable. There is no such nice feature when you can charge the camera via USB wire, but LX100 has one unique feature. It is possible to change aspect ratio with a physical switch. This option definitely will be helpful for people who are seeking or learning photography composition. In summary, what is good about LX100? It is best-in-class shallow depth of field that will give you subject separation and blurry background. Very good video, as Panasonic is known for its great video capabilities, convenient controls, a fast speed and a good low light performance. What is bad about LX100? It is a hardly jeans Pocketable size, lack of tilt screen and lack of touchscreen. The price is around $600-700. In our top 3 list there are smaller cameras. They will fit in your jeans pocket, they are fast and they will deliver very good image quality. And on the 3rd place we have a Canon G7X Mark II. This is a 1-inch sensor camera with 20 megapixels, a wide zoom range from 24 to 100 millimeters, fast aperture from 1.8 to 2.8, but not so shallow equivalent depth of field because a smaller sensor. Still, it's very close. The lens rig can be switched from stepped to stepless, which is good and helpful for video. It has tiltable up and down touchscreen, 8 frames per second, a 5 cm macro at wide angle, Wi-Fi with NFC, no 4K video, but there is a little bit of slow motion, ND filter, optical image stabilization, and built-in flash that can be bounced to about 60 degrees. 265 shots on one charge, no viewfinder, no hot shoe, but the weight of 320 grams and small size will allow you to keep this camera always with you. Just take also a USB to micro USB wire and you will be able to even charge this camera from any USB source. This camera has very good color reproduction algorithms, excellent ergonomics and grip, and physical dial for exposure compensation that will be helpful in many situations. The only drawback I can see in the Canon G7X Mark II is the average video quality with no good slow motion. It costs about $700. On the second place we have Sony RX100 Mark III. The Mark I was the camera who started high quality premium compact camera class. If you compare it to G7X Mark II, we have same sensor, same aperture, zoom range is a little bit shorter, 24 to 70. Sony has no exposure compensation dial and no touchscreen, which I think is the biggest disadvantage of RX100 Mark III. About same speed, about same macro and same video quality. However, Sony has a bigger bitrate and the video quality is a little bit better. Now, what else is different here? The built-in flash is bounceable on the bigger amount of degree, as Sony can shoot more images on the one battery charge. And it has built-in pop-up electronic viewfinder. The rest is more or less same, except maybe zebra pattern and focus peaking in video or live mode. And at the end of the day, the difference between Sony and Canon is a choice between a touchscreen and electronic viewfinder. And in my opinion, the touchscreen wins here, because actually in real life, with such small cameras, people very rarely use electronic viewfinder, because the camera is so small and it's not really comfortable to hold it against your eye. It is much easier to hold it in hands. The price also is around $700. And now, what is the best camera under $700 if all these great cameras are left behind, like Sony RX100 Mark III and Canon G7X Mark II? So this is a Panasonic Lumix LX10. If you are in Europe, then the model name is LX15. It is latest one, and on the paper it outperforms the Sony and Canon cameras. So let's see what is the difference. The aperture at the wide angle is faster by 2/3 of a stop, but moving a zoom range further, it falls very quickly to 2.8 anyway. It has tilt-up touchscreen, a better macro and 4K video with a very good slow motion at 1080p, no ND filter, no viewfinder, but there are some very unique features like 4K photo mode, when you can shoot short clip of video in 4K resolution with 30 frames per second, and later you can choose any frame and save it as image. Also, there is a post-focus feature. This means you can shoot a frame and the camera will take this frame about 2 seconds, and later you can decide what should be in the focus. You can just tap on the screen, and where you tap, this subject will be in focus. So very interesting and very cool feature. And another similar feature is called focus stacking modes. So you shoot same frame for about 2 seconds and tell the camera, I want this image to have everything in focus, and this will happen. On the negative side, we have small buffer in this camera, and autofocus in video mode tend to hunting. So let's summarize what extra we have over our Canon and Sony options. We have a better macro, a better video with 4K and slow motion, and we have those nice post-focus, post-stacking and 4K photo mode features here. And the price is even a little bit cheaper than the Canon and Sony options. It runs about $650, and taking into account that this camera is pretty fresh and new, the price should drop by the time. But honestly, at least for me, it will be very hard to choose between top 3 cameras in this list. Now let's move on and see how image quality differs between all these models. At depreview.com we have one article called Compact Enthusiast Zoom Cameras, and here we can see how the equivalent aperture is dependent on the zoom of each camera. It is clearly visible that Panasonic LX100 have the fastest equivalent aperture, followed by both Canons. Also, it's visible here how fast the aperture is falling depending on the zoom. Now,
let's take a look at image quality. On deepreview.com we have a very useful tool called Studio Scene Comparison Tool and Old Studio Comparison Tool. Here we can choose our camera models, choose a JPEG or RAW and use ISO. Then we can highlight a specific area in a scene and then we will be able to see this specific area of all camera models. Let's take a look at the JPEGs and the lowest possible ISO. At such low ISO, all four models produce very similar results. Canon and Sony gives a little bit more details. Both Panasonics are softer, and at this greenery part the Panasonic LX10 is very soft, but this is probably because of the lens. Such small and built-in lenses tend to give less consistent result across all the frame. Otherwise, the image at so low ISO looks pretty similar. Let's take a look at the quality at ISO 6400. Looks like Canon G7X Mark II gives more natural look, but both Panasonic's high ISO JPEGs looks plasticky. Now let's compare RAW results. And we have opposite situation. At least at lowest ISOs, both Panasonics now produce a little bit more details and sharpness here. So if you choose Panasonic, it's definitely better to shoot RAW and process your images later in RAW converter. Also, take in mind that we are comparing a 100% actual size here. In real life, you will never notice such small differences. However, what you might notice is the difference at high ISO. Let's keep RAW format and move on at ISO 6400. And it is clearly visible that bigger sensor of LX100 give a cleaner result. Canon and Sony produce similarly good result for a 1-inch sensor, and the LX10 is definitely worse here. Seems not so good high ISO result is the reason why LX10 has so plasticky look at JPEGs. The camera just use aggressive algorithms for noise reduction. Now let's change the cameras to see also G1X Mark II, and let's include a Sony Alpha 6000 with a sharp prime lens as a measure of exceptional quality. And now we can see how our small premium compact cameras with built-in lenses compares to one of the best crop sensor camera, Sony A6000, with one of the best sharp prime lens. To my surprise, at low ISO JPEGs there is almost no difference, and only at high ISOs the difference is noticeable. But it is really not so big. As you can see, every camera in our top list has its own strengths and its own weaknesses. Choose your camera based on your feelings. You will be happy with any of these cameras, as they all produce amazing, sharp and colorful results. If you found this video helpful, subscribe and give us a thumb up. Check out links in the description to find out best prices. Have a fun shooting. Bye!